Alex Jones pulled away from Donald Trump a little while ago. In addition to a few critical statements Alex Jones has made, I think, weren't there also those leaked behind-the-scenes comments from some documentary that he did back in late 2020, where he said that Trump was an idiot or something like that? It seemed like a very planned leak, you know what I mean? Like a very convenient point in time for that to come out. Because at the end of the day, as crazy as Trump is, he's ultimately beholden, at least in some ways, to reality, whereas people like Alex Jones are absolutely not. So,
when we come back, but
hey, what's
up,
up,
a bunch
Alex?
of medical doctors I want to play for you on this when we come back. But first, let's take President Trump, who I believe is a good person, and who I really care about, and who I want to see get a lot of good Republicans elected in the midterms, and who I would love to see run again. We got to take him to the woodshed, though, because he came out last week on Fox and Friends and said, I really am suspicious of this booster shot. If this supposedly works so well, why do you need a booster shot? Because you got lied to, Trump. It didn't have 98% efficacy. We knew day one it wouldn't work, period. It's a fraud. It'll create mutants. You got chumped. You got signed on to a fraud to restart the economy. I understand why you did it. You believe in science. Except these are bad actors, sir. You believed America could produce a good vaccine. Of course they could have. They didn't want to. They didn't create a vaccine. They created a Frankenshot. And now they've got you signed up to it. Now the left's saying you better get out there and push it, and you are. CNN comes out and says, we need to see Trump come out and tell people to take the shots. And within weeks of them saying it over and over again, CNN snaps their fingers. Jeff Zucker snaps his fingers and Trump clicks his heels and hops up there at attention and says, how high do you want me to jump, boss? There's Trump in Alabama yesterday.
Let me see this real quick. Gibraltar, Iceland, COVID. Hold on. Iceland is reporting 81 new infections a day on average. It's crazy how spikes for other countries are like insignificant and meaningless compared to the spikes we're having in our country. Let me see. Is there a way to see how much of this is coming from people who are already vaccinated? No. As a general rule, and I've said this before, by the way, I said this yesterday and I'll keep saying it. Okay, please keep this in mind. Anytime somebody tries to disprove the efficacy of the vaccine by pointing out that there's one small community that's seeing a lot of breakthrough vaccinations and not looking at the general data, they're just lying to you. And they know they're lying to you, by the way. They don't care.
I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. You got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I get it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But you got, no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine.
No, he's scared. Yeah. Trump lives for nothing but public approval. That's the only reason he hasn't killed himself by now. So, like, it's the moment they start booing, he's like, no, you know, God, I wish Democrats were this afraid of their audiences. How amazing would that be?
If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama and say, hey, you know what? But it is working.
BS. Trump, that's a lie. You're not stupid. Just 2 weeks ago, they said it was 65%, then 40%. Saw a number put up about Pfizer shots, 30-something%. Because they just want to tell you it doesn't work, so you're running at the new damn shot.
Wait, what? It's 95%. Who's saying that? What? It's 95%. The Pfizer shot is about 95% effective for the first COVID strain, and I think about 90% effective for the Delta variant. So even for the Delta variant, it's, I think, yeah, he's just making up numbers, yeah.
And then they'll tell you in 6 months that one doesn't work. It's called rope-a-dope. Shame on you, Trump. Seriously. Hey, if you don't have the good sense to save yourself and your political career, that's okay. At least you're going to get some good Republicans elected. And, you know, we like you, but my God.
Yeah, man, I like how even Alex Jones can't help but be a political shill. You know what I mean? If anyone else, if it wasn't a candidate that he knew he had a shared audience with, he would be tearing into them over this, you know? Because he's a fucking lunatic. But with Donald Trump, he has to be like, well, you may be pushing the globo-homo vaccine franken-mutant agenda, but at least you'll get some good Republicans elected. Like, damn, is that an argument of lesser evils?
Maybe you're not that bright. Maybe Trump's actually a dumbass. All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Nice meme. That's good. I think what we're seeing right now is we are seeing the Republican Party do the same thing again that it did back in 2016 with Trump supporters and the neocon establishment, you know, where there is a crazier break-off fragment of the Republican Party that is going to lambast and criticize the previous establishment Republican Party for not being as fucking crazy as them, And invariably, I think, if history has anything to say about it, they're going to end up moving more towards Alex Jones' position. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is like the future of the Republican Party, you know? I think that it is. I don't know how the Republican Party can ever move back to a sort of contemplative, neoconservative, like measured civic nationalism. And that's still reprehensible, by the way. I'm not defending that. I'm just saying that I don't know how they can move back to that. Trump was always kind of a slippery slope, and it seems like look at right now, like Laura Ingraham as well. There are so many Republicans who are afraid to acknowledge that the vaccine works. But to what benefit? The country is crippled right now because of COVID. They're okay with the country remaining crippled. And why? Because it's a way of politically differentiating yourself away from the establishment you're trying to pull away from. A comparable example. What do tankies do and other like weirdo online left types do with liberals? They're more concerned with distinguishing themselves from liberals than they are attacking real social ills, you know? A lot of people on the online left who are like that, where their first priority is to make sure nobody could mistake them for a liberal. So they'll relentlessly attack the Democratic Party, even when they're doing the relatively correct thing in a given instance. And they will even sometimes side with the right if it means distinguishing themselves from the liberals. They never, ever, ever want to be called liberals. And for that reason, they get pushed in wacky directions. And that's what's happening right now with elements of the Republican Party, where they are willing to sell everything down the road as long as they can distinguish themselves from the sections of the Republican Party that are at least tangentially adhered to reality, you know, who are at least like in the periphery of reality. Vis-a-vis the whole COVID and vaccine stuff. Is this good for us or is it bad for us? It's hard to say. On one hand, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene would see us all in death camps if she could. The QAnon is an explicitly neo-Nazi conspiracy theory that is fundamentally derived from evangelical Christian conspiracy theories about Jewish power and about Satanists denying the dominion of God through one of any number of potential things, you know? If you ever want a full read into that, by the way, go look at the video from the channel Folding Ideas on Flat Earth. He talks about how, in a way, the Flat Earth movement disappeared from online because they all got folded into the QAnon movement, which is completely true. Flat Earthers online did kind of lose relevance as soon as QAnon became a thing because they all moved over. It's all like a conspiracy hodgepodge where people's brains are broken and they just hop from position to position to position. But the most consistent position held by those conspiracy types is evangelical Christianity. And that is true. Unfortunately, regardless of your position on Christianity or religion in general, it is almost always evangelical Christians who believe that some element of reality or science or civic progress is a plot by Satanists to remove us from God. Flat earthers or people who believe Earth is the center of the universe, the reason they believe these things overwhelmingly is because those cosmetological formations support their idea that humanity is special, created by God, whereas the idea that we're just a speck of dust floating through nothing, they don't like that very much. And QAnon sort of gives credence to the broader political notions of the movement, the idea that the world is controlled by a group of satanic pedophiles with their adrenochrome and what have you, and that the only way to fight back against it is through... I mean, if you think that you're fighting for God against Satan, you can do basically anything you want, right? We recently saw that dad who, killed his son because he thought he was a lizard person, remember? If you think you're a warrior of God fighting against the existential manifestation of evil, you're justified in doing virtually anything. This is precisely how the Nazis justified their behavior as well, you know? They didn't just say, oh, we kill people because it's fun. I'm sure some of them said that, but for the most part, it was because the gravity of their situation, in their mind, justified essentially anything they could do to get themselves out of there, up to and including the Holocaust and everything else, you know? And it's same with QAnon types. When they kill people, when they threaten people when they talk about like slaughtering all the liberals. They do talk about that in QAnon circles, by the way, that they want a great awakening where all of their conspiracies are vindicated and proven true, and Trump leads an authoritarian revolt where they're in control, and then they purge the liberals and the communists and the godless from society, which would kill hundreds of millions. It would be the greatest Holocaust in the history of humanity. It would pale like it would literally beat out any other mass death event. But they talk about it openly. And the reason they do is because they think that people like you and people like me are agents of evil. We don't disagree with them because we have different political ideas. We're literally just brainwashed, you know? They take our political concerns as seriously as if, like, and I'm using an example that's ludicrous because I really do think that's how it feels in their head. If you guys were, like, fighting an evil, like, fantasy monster that raised the dead, and the dead kept saying stuff like, why won't you stop fighting? Stop, this hurts. Like, they think of it as, like, the manufactured pleading of those who have already been lost, you know? Our political beliefs are just obstacles meant to test their faith. Does that make sense? We're just an obstacle in a holy war for them. So, with all of that being said, yeah, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene being the future of the Republican Party is pretty fucking bad. There is the possibility that it will continue to alienate people outside of that group, especially if the people in power ever explicitly validate the genocidal intentions of the QAnon conspiracy theory. But honestly, it could go either way. I honestly don't know. I genuinely don't know if that would even cause them to lose that much in the way of support. And we know where Alex Jones would be on the side of all this, of course. I don't think Alex Jones believes in any of the shit that he's saying, but it's pretty clear where, you know, his audience comes from. So he would be in line with that. And yeah, it's you never really know. Yes, he is an effective grifter, for sure, for sure. This is one of the reasons, by the way, why I am fundamentally opposed to mysticism of any kind. Spirituality, religion, I'm anti all of those things. Specifically because I think you can get moved on political ideas or get pushed towards political ends, which are not only irrational, but outright genocidal, and it becomes impossible to move you off of them, you know? If you accept one element of mysticism, spiritualism, or superstition, you are more pliable to the rest of them, which is the reason why, by the way, anti-vaccine types tend to be the crystal healing types, tend to be the homeopathy types, tend to be the flat earth types, tend to be the everything else types. It all bleeds together into a sort of general skepticism of reality. Vosh, that's a slippery slope argument? Yes, and I think it's an accurate one. If you start to teach people that they can believe things in spite of evidence, yeah, I do think that is a slippery slope to other things where they want... Like, how could you convince them otherwise? Like, yeah, actually, evidence doesn't matter with crystal healing. This is something that exists entirely outside the purview of empirical measurement. But let's not get crazy and be anti-vax. Like, how do you... Yeah, I mean, of course these would all bleed together, you know? And yeah, the anti-vaxxers tend to be the QAnoners, tend to be the spirit healers, tend to be the... Yeah, like it all... Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, astrology as well. That's why I don't like astrology. I really don't like astrology. I think you're going too far in QAnon there. Conspiratorial, yes, but genocide, really? No, yeah, explicitly. That's not subtext. Read their forums. Yeah, the Great Awakening leads to the Surge, and the Surge is a massive authoritarian revolt where they seize control of the government and use that power to purge America of the Satanists and the people who enable them. That's explicitly the goal of QAnon. That's what's the storm, not the Surge, the storm. My bad. Yeah, explicitly what they talk about. Yeah, it's just the day of the rope, but with different words, basically. Yeah, it's just the rapture that they're talking about. And by the way, what is the rapture? Besides, like, genocidal ideation. Oh yeah, dude, we're right about religion. I can't wait for God to come back and commit all of you to eternal misery and suffering, and then he elevates us. I mean, really, the rapture is just, like, the ideation of genocidal intent, except it's being done by a supernatural force rather than being done by, like, political agents. Does that make it better? I mean, that's kind of weird. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. Pumax Thurman, I'm sorry. Look, there are plenty of good people who are Christians. I'm not saying that if you're a Christian, you're a bad person. But I affirm, and I'll die on this hill, that any kind of spiritualism, every kind of spiritualism, has been used by bad political actors to justify abhorrent ends. Like, consistently, all throughout history, this happens. All the time this happens. It's always about giving yourself to a greater cause, and what greater cause is there than the creator of the universe specifically recruiting you as a soldier in a holy war against the incarnation of evil? That is the highest... There is literally no greater cause to commit yourself to, and it's why so many of the greatest sins are committed in its name. Of course, there are people in chat who are spiritual who are going to argue against this, but look, guys, as far as I'm concerned, your spiritualism is like my ironic misogyny, okay? Look, look, I think it's problematic. You can justify it if you want. Maybe you're one of the good ones, but I stand by that it's problematic, and you're not going to move me off of this. Okay, I love you. I'm not casting the first stone. I recognize I do problematic stuff. I'm a man. Blah blah blah. Okay, I'm just saying.